They stare, they whisper, they laugh. In a luxury boutique where prices for a single custom piece start at what most people save in half a year, a black woman walks in, not dressed for their expectations, not playing by their unspoken rules. The manager's voice slices through the room like a sneer. Your kind of browsing doesn't belong here. Don't waste our inventory time. Phones angle. Customers smirk. Humiliation becomes entertainment. But what nobody knows, not yet, is that this nobody holds the contract that keeps their entire business afloat. And today, prejudice will pay its price. The story doesn't end there. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, and tell me where you are watching from in the comments below. Imani Zola let the heavy glass door swing shut behind her, sealing her into the cool, climate-controlled silence of the Tress vault. Outside, the Los Angeles afternoon was baking, but inside this palace of premium hair, the air was sharp with the scent of high-end oils and ambition. She smoothed the front of her favorite white cotton t-shirt, its softness and necessary comfort after a red-eye flight from Milan. Her dark wash jeans and simple leather sneakers were practical, a choice she made for comfort, not a statement. Yet, in this environment, it was a statement of belonging to a different class of wealth, one that didn't feel the need to advertise its existence with loud logos or conspicuous consumption. She scanned the room, ignoring the subtle, quick glances that slid over her. They saw a woman in casual street clothes, not the CEO of the Zola Beauty Group, a powerhouse that dictated trends across 4 continents. That was their mistake, and today, it was a costly one. Her reason for being here, ignoring the jet lag and the obvious scrutiny, was displayed in the far back corner, the Tress of Eden line. In less than 48 hours, Imani was due on stage to accept the Innovator of the Year award at the Global Beauty Summit. It was a career-defining moment, a public recognition of years of work perfecting ethical, sustainable sourcing practices. And for that moment, she needed the wig she had custom-ordered 6 months ago, a rare, full-lace piece, ethically sourced from a single, remote temple in Asia, whose quality was simply irreplaceable. It wasn't just a purchase. It was a ceremonial anchor, a symbol of the integrity she had built her empire upon. She navigated the velvet ropes and mirrored displays, her eyes bypassing the cheaper synthetic options and the standard human hair blends. Her focus was sharp, direct. She finally reached the back wall, where the most exclusive pieces were presented like fine jewelry under museum-quality spotlights. There it was, the Tress of Eden collection, shimmering with a natural, almost liquid flow. The piece she sought, a deep mahogany hue, sat on its custom stand, looking less like a wig and more like spun gold. The quality was unmistakable, silky, flawless, proof that Imani's standards were the highest in the world. She reached out a hand, needing to feel the texture, knowing this single item represented the absolute pinnacle of her entire supply chain. Imani Zola stood by the glass case for 5 long minutes. The display lights, which made the Tress of Eden wig shimmer like liquid darkness, seemed only to amplify her isolation. The air grew heavy with her ignored presence. She was not loud. She was not demanding. Yet in the unspoken hierarchy of the Tress vault, her casual attire marked her as irrelevant. A young sales associate with a meticulously sculpted blonde wig and a crisp black dress passed directly in front of her. The associate paused, not to offer assistance, but to straighten a nearby velvet rope, adjusting it with a swift, proprietary motion. Her gaze lifted, skimmed over Imani's simple t-shirt and jeans, and then snapped away toward a nearby cluster of women in designer attire who were giggling over a catalog. No greeting. No eye contact. Imani was air. A second associate, wearing a tight, dark suit, was busy on a headset near the cash desk. He was discussing delivery schedules and using industry jargon with the practiced ease of someone who was trying to sound important. His eyes, however, betrayed a constant sweep of the floor, a surveillance meant to track potential buyers. When his scan hit Imani, his face remained neutral, but the pace of his steps quickened as he looped wide, putting a safe distance between her and his corner of the showroom. Imani felt the familiar pressure of being dismissed. This was the silent accusation she had faced her entire career, from bank loan officers years ago to beauty industry gatekeepers last month. You do not belong here. Your money must be counterfeit. Your dreams are too big for your profile. She inhaled slowly, letting the insult settle but refusing to let it sting. Her reflection in the polished glass stared back at her, a woman composed, successful, and temporarily invisible. The assumption of the store staff was that she was a time waster, a tire kicker, who had wandered into the wrong boutique after running errands. They assumed she was there to touch and spoil inventory she couldn't afford. They assumed she lacked the generational wealth their actual clientele possessed. What they failed to grasp was that their actual clientele were often dressed in the hair her company distributed. She waited. 1 minute, then 2. The ticking clock of her schedule, the Global Beauty Summit deadline rapidly approaching, ratcheted up the internal tension. She needed to buy the item, review its quality, and be on the next leg of her business trip. This detour was supposed to be a point of pride, not a test of patience. Yet, the longer she was ignored, the more the simple transaction became a deliberate act of prejudice. It was not just poor customer service. It was a quiet enforcement of a toxic hierarchy. As the 5th minute drew to a close, a new sound cut through the soft, ambient music, a sound far sharper than the sales chatter or the rustle of expensive shopping bags. It was a voice, high-pitched and corporate-sounding, delivered with the kind of forced authority that only truly insecure managers possess. What is this doing here? The tone wasn't a question directed at a sales associate, but an immediate challenge, an invasive declaration meant to be heard by everyone. Imani lifted her head and turned from the Tress of Eden display to face the owner of the voice, knowing instantly that the quiet dismissal was about to escalate into a loud, public confrontation. Imani lifted her head and turned from the display case. Stepping through the aisle of pearl-studded extensions and diamond-accented packaging came Seraphina Valois, the manager, a woman whose entire presence screamed propriety. She was dressed in a pristine navy suit that appeared carved out of granite, her own blonde hair pulled back into a severely neat chignon, giving her face an air of perpetual disapproval. She moved with an aggressive confidence, her heels clicking sharply against the polished marble floor, a deliberate noise in the otherwise muted luxury of the store. Seraphina did not approach to greet, nor did she maintain the polite distance typical of high-end retail. She advanced directly toward Imani and the display, stopping close enough for the scent of her sharp, floral perfume to mix with the high-quality air filtration. Her hand, manicured and ringed with a modest solitaire, pointed not at Imani, but menacingly at the glass case holding the Tress of Eden wig. "What are you doing here?" Seraphina's voice wasn't raised, but it had a cruel, cutting edge, the kind of tone used to address an employee caught slacking, not a potential customer. Her gaze swept over Imani's white tee and practical shoes with blatant, undisguised contempt. "This section isn't for window shoppers. If you need something, the synthetic blends are along the far wall near the discount brushes. This," she flicked her polished finger against the glass, making a sharp, attention-grabbing sound, "is curated inventory for our dedicated clientele." The sales associates, previously occupied or actively avoiding Imani, now froze. The small cluster of formally dressed women who had been giggling nearby fell silent. The air in the Tress vault tightened, all eyes fixed on the confrontation. Humiliation was now center stage, and Seraphina was clearly enjoying the spotlight. Imani felt the rush of heat that always accompanied public condescension, but years of building her empire had taught her to channel that energy into ice-cold focus. She didn't flinch, didn't argue, and crucially, she didn't justify her presence. Her voice remained calm, low, and even, a stark contrast to the manager's brittle arrogance. "I am interested in the specifications of this specific piece," Imani said, indicating the mahogany Tress of Eden wig with a slight nod. "It's a unique 5x5 HD lace piece, correct? I'd also like to confirm the ethical sourcing documentation for this particular batch. Could I speak with a floor expert who handles the custom orders?" Seraphina blinked, momentarily thrown by the use of precise industry terminology. The manager had expected stammering, perhaps a quick exit. She regrouped quickly, her face hardening into an expression of theatrical pity, determined to shut down the interaction. "Oh, sweetie," Seraphina drawled, leaning slightly toward Imani as if sharing a painful secret. "The Tress of Eden doesn't just come with specifications. It comes with a price tag that starts at $8,000. That's before styling or custom fitting." She emphasized the dollar amount, glancing around the room to ensure all the spectators had absorbed the magnitude of the expense. The implication was clear: look at your clothes. Look at the price. Now leave. "I understand the price," Imani replied, her voice remaining perfectly steady. Her arms, which had been relaxed by her sides, slowly crossed over her chest, a gesture less of defense and more of contained power. "I still require the information. If you cannot provide a floor expert, perhaps you can assist me yourself, manager." Seraphina laughed, a brittle, high sound that scraped against the quiet elegance of the room. It was not a laugh of amusement, but of pure mockery, and it was the final, unforgivable transgression. "I'm assisting you right now," Seraphina sneered, dropping the false sweetness. She lowered her voice just enough to maintain control, but loud enough for the captive audience. "You are wasting my time, you are wasting my associates' time, and frankly, you're making my paying clientele nervous." Her eyes bore into Imani's with undisguised racial and class prejudice. "Go back to the discount district where you belong. You need to leave the Tress vault. Now." Imani met Seraphina's gaze. The insult was direct, ugly, and designed to inflict maximum public shame. It wasn't about the wig anymore. It was about dignity. Imani looked at Seraphina for a long, silent moment, absorbing the full measure of her arrogance. She nodded once, a slow, deliberate movement, confirming she had heard every word. The sudden, harsh laughter of Seraphina Valois echoed in the showroom, a sound so out of place in the muted, polished atmosphere of the Tress vault that it compelled every head to turn. She had escalated the confrontation from a private dismissal into a public spectacle, and she reveled in the role of the righteous gatekeeper. "Oh, sweetie," Seraphina drawled again, leaning slightly toward Imani as if sharing a painful, pitying secret, but projecting her voice just enough for the surrounding clientele to hear. "I don't think you quite understood me. This isn't the clearance bin. You're asking about a custom-sourced piece. Do you know what that means? The price for that specific item, the mahogany Tress of Eden, starts at $8,000. She emphasized the figure with a deliberate pause, her eyes sweeping the audience she had acquired. "That's before the bespoke fitting, the custom coloring, the sealing, and the 3-month maintenance package our real clients require." She wasn't just stating the price. She was using the financial figure as a weapon, swinging it directly at Imani's casual attire and her presence. The implication was a stinging slap of classism and prejudice. Your simple t-shirt and jeans betray you. You don't know the difference between a wig and a status symbol, so you can't possibly afford this. Seraphina's lips curled in a tight, victorious smirk, confident in her ability to shame Imani into retreat. Imani remained perfectly still, her arms crossed over her chest, which tightened with the effort of containing her reaction. She felt the eyes of the other shoppers, the paying clientele, all focused on her. Some looked away immediately, embarrassed by the manager's brutality. Others, notably a few women draped in diamonds, allowed their amusement to show, their slight smiles confirming Seraphina's performance was working. One woman even subtly angled her phone, pretending to check the time, but clearly capturing the confrontation. Humiliation had officially become entertainment for the privileged. Imani knew the difference between synthetic and natural hair, not just as a consumer, but as the owner of the company that set the global benchmark for natural hair quality. She didn't need Seraphina to explain the price. She had signed the contracts that set the wholesale price for that exact piece. "I asked for a floor expert," Imani repeated, her voice low and dangerously even, cutting through the manager's theatricality like glass. "If you cannot produce one, I still require the ethical sourcing documentation for that specific batch." If you are the manager, you are responsible for it. Seraphina's face flushed with irritation, surprised that her bullying tactics weren't resulting in a tearful retreat. Imani's quiet dignity was a challenge to Seraphina's authority. She decided to go for the kill, dispensing with all pretense of professionalism. I'm responsible for protecting my inventory and my atmosphere, Seraphina sneered, leaning in conspiratorially toward Imani's face. Let me be very clear, madam. You are making my actual, money-spending clientele nervous. They don't appreciate having someone wandering around in a white t-shirt, asking questions about items they can't possibly afford, especially with the high theft rates in this area. She didn't whisper the last part. She announced it, letting the racial and class implications hang heavy in the air. I am telling you now, go back to the discount district where you belong. You need to leave the Tress vault. Now, this was the point of no return. The manager had not only judged Imani based on her race and attire, but had openly accused her of being a potential thief, a disruptor, an unwanted element. The insult was complete, public, and documented. Imani looked into Seraphina's smug, satisfied eyes that held no regret, only contemptuous victory. Instead of raising her voice, instead of revealing the Zola Beauty Group's billion-dollar valuation or the enormous contract that made Seraphina's job possible, Imani simply nodded. It was a slow, deliberate acknowledgement that confirmed she had heard and registered every syllable of the manager's prejudice. Imani Zola turned slowly, her movement deliberate and unhurried. The entire showroom of the Tress vault was her stage now, and the manager, Seraphina Valois, stood frozen mid-smirk, the victor in a battle that had not yet been fought. Imani's arms remained crossed, a physical barrier designed to contain the heat of her indignation. Underneath the calm surface of her skin, her heart was not racing with panic or anger, but beating with the slow, controlled rhythm of a predator assessing a landscape. She took one deep breath, the scent of hair products and Seraphina's aggressive perfume filling her lungs, and exhaled slowly, focusing entirely on the dignified exit. She did not offer a final cutting line. She did not argue the price, nor did she present her platinum card. To plead, to prove her worth, or to defend her attire would have been to accept the premise of Seraphina's prejudice. Imani refused to legitimize the manager's malice. Her silence was a weapon far sharper than any verbal attack. It signaled that the interaction was over, not because Seraphina had won, but because Imani had simply canceled the game. With the unhurried grace of someone completing a minor, forgettable errand, she walked toward the glass doors. She passed the customers who had been watching the spectacle, some dropping their gazes in quick shame, others still whispering. Imani met none of their eyes. She kept her focus fixed on the sunlight streaming through the exit, every step a quiet, resolute declaration of self-respect. She could feel Seraphina's gaze burning into her back, a look of confused triumph turning slowly to irritation as the expected dramatic, tearful collapse failed to materialize. Imani pushed through the doors and into the humid heat of the street. It was only when the heavy glass hissed shut behind her that her physical tension began to dissipate. She reached the black SUV waiting discreetly at the curb, its tinted windows offering immediate sanctuary. She slipped into the passenger seat, not bothering to buckle up yet, and simply stared out the window. The reflection in the glass was sharp, her composed face framed by the dark, luxurious interior of the vehicle. She was not crying. She was intensely, coldly focused. Her hands, which had been crossed, were now resting loosely in her lap, but she could still feel the phantom tension in her jaw. The humiliation was not erased, but it was packaged, sealed, and ready to be dealt with. Imani didn't need to look up the boutique's address. She knew it intimately. She knew the location, the square footage, the lease terms, and the names of the corporate board members who signed the checks. She looked past the manicured planters and the polished brass sign that read, "The Tress Vault," to the core of the business inside. Seraphina Valois was a manager, nothing more. But Imani Zola was the lifeline. Her company, Zola Beauty Group, didn't just sell to the Tress Vault. It was the exclusive distributor for the hyper-premium, ethically sourced hair that accounted for nearly 60% of the boutique's annual high-margin revenue. Without Imani's product, the Tress Vault was just an overpriced room full of common synthetics. She pulled her phone from her purse, her fingers moving with precision across the screen. She located the number for Bayo, her general counsel. Imani looked one last time at the facade of the luxury store, where Seraphina Valois was likely still preening over her perceived victory. That woman had just publicly insulted and accused a crucial business partner, a woman who controlled her entire supply chain, based on a single glance at a t-shirt and the color of her skin. Seraphina had mistaken dignity for defeat and substance for surface. Imani hit the call button. The decision was not driven by anger, but by a chilling, absolute certainty. This was not about revenge. This was about demonstrating the consequences of toxic prejudice in a corporate structure. It was time for the silent power to speak. The moment Imani Zola pushed through the glass doors of the Tress Vault, she initiated a chain reaction far more disruptive than any loud argument she could have staged inside. Sitting in the cool, leather interior of her SUV, looking at the arrogant facade of the boutique, she was no longer merely a frustrated customer. She was the decisive force behind a global enterprise. Her company, Zola Beauty Group, ZBG, was not a minor supplier or a local vendor. It was a multinational behemoth specializing in the ethical sourcing and distribution of the world's rarest and highest quality natural hair. Imani hadn't just founded ZBG. She had revolutionized the industry by creating fully traceable, ethical supply chains, a guarantee that was immensely valuable and difficult to replicate. Her focus wasn't on volume, but on the exclusive, untouchable quality that commands astronomical margins. The Tress of Eden collection, the very item Seraphina Valois had so arrogantly used as a weapon, was the crown jewel of Imani's entire distribution network. It was sourced through proprietary partnerships with remote communities and represented a level of traceability and ethical assurance that no other distributor could match. This single line was exclusive to ZBG. And here was the critical context. The Tress Vault was not some independent luxury retailer with a robust, diversified inventory. It was a flagship client in their region, and ZBG's premium hairlines, including the Tress of Eden, accounted for over 60% of the boutique's total annual high-end sales revenue. This wasn't a standard business relationship. It was a relationship of dependency. Imani's distribution kept the lights on and validated the store's elite status. Without ZBG, the Tress Vault instantly reverted to a mid-market retailer, unable to fulfill orders for its wealthiest clients. Imani, the woman dismissed for her jeans and t-shirt, was the one who personally signed the contracts and upheld the strict ethical standards that allowed that $8,000 wig to exist in that store. Every shimmer, every sale, every claim of exclusivity that Seraphina relied upon flowed directly from Imani's desk. She was the true substance, the laborer, the creator of the ethical supply chain, the source of the wealth. Seraphina Valois was merely the surface, the gatekeeper of a shallow hierarchy built entirely on Imani's hard-won product. Seraphina had seen a casual black woman and assumed poverty and malice. Imani knew the truth. She had just given Seraphina Valois the corporate equivalent of a terminal diagnosis. The cold anger that gripped Imani was not personal, but corporate, a necessary, clinical action against a severe operational risk. Prejudice, especially when directed at a crucial business partner, was not merely rude. It was a breach of contract and a direct threat to ZBG's global reputation. Imani was now holding the power to yank the lifeline, and she was already dialing the general counsel, Kellen, to ensure the process was swift, final, and undeniable. Her goal was not just to fire a manager, but to send a clear, unequivocal message to the entire retail ecosystem. Prejudice will immediately and catastrophically destroy your revenue stream. Imani Zola clicked on the contact labeled Kellen, GC on her phone, her thumb pressing down with a cold, definitive force. She did not waste time with pleasantries or preamble. The professional distance she maintained in the vehicle was a mirror for the corporate action she was about to unleash. The line clicked open. "Kellen," she stated, her voice steady and flat, betraying none of the public humiliation she had just endured. "We have a major discrimination and contract violation problem at the Tress Vault. You need to pull up the master distribution agreement immediately." Kellen, her general counsel, a man known for his unflappable demeanor and razor-sharp legal precision, simply acknowledged the request with a professional hum. "What is the severity, Imani? Contract breach or policy violation?" "Both," she clipped out. "The manager, Seraphina Valois, just publicly humiliated me and accused me of being a thief based purely on my attire and appearance. She did this in front of other clients and staff. This isn't poor service. It's a direct violation of the zero-tolerance clause we inserted concerning client-supplier interactions and discrimination." She paused, looking at the gleaming storefront of the Tress Vault. "You know what the Tress of Eden line is to them. It accounts for 60% of their high-margin exclusivity. The violation is severe enough that we can, and should, initiate immediate contract termination proceedings." Kellen's voice, now alert and low, held a distinct edge. "Understood. That clause is ironclad. We can issue a notice of immediate cure or termination based on that conduct alone. Consider this escalated to the highest priority." Imani confirmed the strategy. "I want the owner, not just the regional manager, aware of this situation within the hour. And I want the termination of Seraphina Valois to precede any official notice of contract termination. She needs to be the first consequence." This wasn't about spite. It was about strategy. The Tress Vault needed to understand that the behavior of their manager had jeopardized their entire elite business model. Imani's request was clear. It wasn't revenge, but the ruthless enforcement of a corporate standard. "I need you to ensure this is handled cleanly and professionally," Imani instructed. "No emotional arguments. Simply present the facts of the public shaming, the contract violation, and the immediate, non-negotiable risk to their revenue stream. Our reputation for ethical, high-standard conduct is our most valuable asset, Kellen. We do not tolerate partners whose staff undermine that." "It will be handled, Imani," Kellen assured her. "I'm making the calls now. Expect confirmation within the hour." Imani hung up. She looked once more at the boutique, her face a mask of resolve. The manager was still inside, basking in her perceived triumph, completely unaware that the subtle, quiet woman she had just dismissed had initiated the process of destroying her career, not with a shout, but with a single, devastating phone call. The corporate hammer was about to drop. The quiet triumph that Seraphina Valois felt after expelling Imani Zola from the Tress Vault lasted exactly 13 minutes. She was standing by the cash desk, straightening a stack of branded shopping bags and reviewing the security footage of her confrontation with a smug self-satisfaction. The other sales associates were carefully pretending to work, the silence in the showroom charged not with luxury, but with apprehension. Seraphina was reveling in the feeling of having asserted her authority, maintaining the integrity of her luxury space. Then, the phone rang. It was the private, direct line reserved only for corporate headquarters, the one that bypasses the general switchboard and rings with an immediate, high-priority tone. Seraphina answered with her usual authoritative snap. "The Tress Vault, Manager Valois speaking." The voice on the other end was not the usual regional supervisor, but Mr. Sterling, the chief operations officer of the entire retail holding group, a man Seraphina had met precisely once at a distant Christmas party. His voice was not angry, but devastatingly cold and concise. "Seraphina Valois," he began, without preamble. "I am calling regarding a critical, non-negotiable supply chain crisis that has been triggered by your conduct in the last 15 minutes. I have just been on the phone with the general counsel of Zola Beauty Group. I hope that name rings a bell for you, Seraphina." Seraphina's composure shattered. The high flush of victory drained instantly from her face, leaving her features paper white. Zola Beauty Group, the sole supplier of the Tress of Eden, the source of 60% of their high-margin business. The casual woman in the white t-shirt. "Sir," I don't understand, Seraphina stammered, her voice suddenly high and thin, the arrogant edge completely gone. I was simply maintaining decorum. She was not dressed appropriately. I didn't recognize the Zola distributor. She never identified herself. Mr. Sterling's voice cut through her desperate, whispered excuses. She was not obligated to identify herself, Seraphina. She was, however, entitled to professional respect, which your actions publicly violated. Our contract with ZBG contains an explicit zero-tolerance clause regarding supplier interactions and discrimination. You have triggered that clause by publicly insulting and making an accusation of theft against Ms. Zola. Your conduct is now a legal liability that threatens our entire high-end inventory. He did not pause for breath. Effective immediately, Seraphina, your employment with the holding group is terminated. You are to clock out, relinquish your keys, and vacate the premises. Your access badge has already been deactivated. The phone clicked dead. Seraphina stood behind the counter, the receiver still pressed uselessly to her ear. The entire sequence had taken less than 90 seconds, but it had felt like a year. Her world, which was built on the solid rock of her assumed authority, had collapsed faster than it took her to shout that final, cruel insult. One of the associates, a young woman named Maya, slowly approached the counter, concern mingling with shock. Seraphina? What's wrong? Who was that? Seraphina swallowed hard, her eyes darting around the showroom. The customers who had enjoyed the show moments ago were now watching her with a mix of morbid curiosity and fear. I've been terminated, she managed to choke out. Effective immediately. Before Seraphina could even begin to process the finality, an alert flashed on the private monitor behind the desk, and a text announcement was pushed to every associate's internal device. It was an official company memorandum, instantly broadcast to the entire store network. Memorandum: immediate leadership change. Effective immediately, Seraphina Valois is no longer an employee of the Tress Vault. The Tress Vault and its holding company maintain a zero-tolerance policy on discrimination, disrespectful conduct, and harassment toward any client, vendor, or supplier. We deeply regret any breach of this standard. An immediate review of customer engagement standards is underway, and all staff will undergo mandatory sensitivity and professionalism training beginning tomorrow. Furthermore, we are working closely with Zola Beauty Group to maintain our vital supply relationship. The whispers began immediately, no longer focused on Imani's clothes, but on Seraphina's sudden, devastating downfall. They knew the truth. They had witnessed countless acts of prejudice under Seraphina's management, but they had never seen the instant, corporate consequence. The manager's uniform, which had given her such power moments ago, now looked cheap and ridiculous. Two solemn-faced, well-dressed corporate representatives arrived within the hour, asking the associates the piercing, silent question, "Has this happened before? Did anyone ever speak up?" Imani Zola didn't return to the boutique to watch the scene. She didn't need to. Her purpose was achieved, the prejudice was confronted, and the corporate contract risk was mitigated. Seraphina Valois' career was destroyed, not by an emotional outburst, but by the cold, devastating logic of the business she had served so poorly. The corporate hammer had fallen. Imani Zola, still in her SUV a block away from the now silent and shaken the Tress Vault, received the text confirmation from Kellen. Seraphina Valois terminated. Contract termination notice issued pending a full internal review, and a mandated public apology to Zola Beauty Group forthcoming. The victory was complete, clinical, and immediate. Imani did not feel a rush of personal revenge. Instead, she felt the quiet satisfaction of having enforced justice and protected the ethical standards of her brand. Her mission now was practical: secure the Tress of Eden wig. She instructed her driver not to return to the disgraced boutique, but to proceed immediately to Anya's atelier, a smaller, highly reputable beauty supply house known for its impeccable, if less ostentatious, customer service. Imani had always admired Anya, the owner, for running a business rooted in respect. When Imani walked into Anya's modest, warm shop, she was greeted instantly, not with judgment, but with a genuine smile and a warm welcome. She explained the situation simply. The custom Tress of Eden piece was unavailable due to a breach with the supplier, and she needed a suitable replacement in under 24 hours. Anya did not flinch at the urgency or the high price point. Instead, she offered immediate, respectful assistance. Within an hour, Anya's best stylist had assessed Imani's needs and secured an alternative piece of equally exquisite, ethically sourced hair from a private collection. The transaction was smooth, courteous, and professional. As Imani signed the receipt, she realized the profound difference between the two experiences. Seraphina's shop was built on snobbery and fear. Anya's was built on genuine service and respect. She left Anya's atelier with the perfect wig and a renewed sense of pride, not in her wealth, but in her composure. 2 days later, Imani Zola stood on the stage of the Global Beauty Summit. The auditorium lights were blazing, the cameras were rolling, and the most influential figures in the international beauty industry were on their feet applauding. She looked radiant, powerful, and utterly composed. On her head sat the magnificent, custom-styled wig, its mahogany hues catching the light, a symbol of the ethical excellence and fierce integrity of the Zola Beauty Group. In her acceptance speech, Imani never mentioned the name Seraphina Valois, nor did she allude to the Tress vault. She spoke instead of the importance of recognizing substance over surface, dignity over display, and character over cost. When you build an empire, she stated, her voice resonating across the vast hall, you must ensure that every single brick, every single interaction, from the farmer who sources the raw material to the person who sells the final product, is built on respect. Because the moment you judge value based on appearance, you devalue your entire foundation. After the ceremony, as photographers clustered around her, capturing the image of the triumphant CEO, Imani remembered the manager's cruel sneer and the quiet dignity of her exit. The final, essential lesson of that day was not about the power of her bank account, but the unshakable power of her character. She had refused to descend to Seraphina's level of spite, choosing instead the quiet, decisive action of corporate consequence. Seraphina Valois judged the surface, the white t-shirt, the jeans, the appearance of being out of place. Imani Zola defined the substance, the global contracts, the ethical supply chain, and the dignified resilience that proved her worth was entirely independent of external validation. The story concluded, not with a burst of anger, but with the quiet, overwhelming victory of substance. The true cost of prejudice, Seraphina learned too late, was not just a job, but the destruction of her entire professional standing by the very person she had dismissed as nothing. Imani's victory was not loud, it was absolute. She didn't need to yell, argue, or beg to prove her value. She simply activated the quiet, devastating power of her professionalism and corporate reach. She exposed the fundamental, fatal error of Seraphina Valois, judging a person's substance based on their surface appearance. Seraphina mistook a casually dressed mogul for a thief, and in doing so, destroyed her entire career in minutes. Imani demonstrated that true power resides not in a sharp suit or a luxury store's facade, but in integrity, dignity, and control over the supply chain. This story, like so many others we tell, proves that in a world obsessed with appearances, we must constantly remember that the quietest people often carry the heaviest contracts. If you believe in standing up for dignity, if you believe in the power of substance over show, and if you believe that prejudice deserves immediate corporate consequences, then make sure you never miss a moment of the stories we uncover. Don't just watch the truth, support it. Subscribe to the Truth Strikes channel. Hit that notification bell so you get the full story the moment it drops. Like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. What is the most important lesson Seraphina Valois learned today? Thank you for watching, and remember, never let someone decide what you're worth by what they think they see. Truth strikes.